Welcome to this month's edition of the Ward 5 Monthly Public Safety Call. We will get started momentarily. We're going to allow more guests to join us. But again, we appreciate you taking time to join us today. Again, good afternoon, everyone. We are looking forward to sharing information about public safety incidents in and around Ward 5, as well as providing opportunities for you to ask questions. We're going to jump in for the sake of time, but before we move forward, I want to acknowledge our guests for this month's call. And as a reminder, every month our calls are recorded. The recordings live on our YouTube page. We share them also on our website and in our weekly newsletter. We know 3 o'clock is not the best time for everyone. It is, however, the best time often for community partners. And so we feel it's important for us to hold it this time, and we can share the recording for other neighbors to be able to watch at a later date. Again, you can visit ZacharyParkerWard5.com to view recordings as well as get other information pertaining to our office. For this month, we have with us Commander Donald from the Metro Transit Police Department. We invited Commander Donald following the tragic incident at Brooklyn Metro to talk more about what is happening following the homicide there, as well as the steps that they are taking in conjunction with MPD to prevent future incidents. We also have our 5D commander, Altieri, to talk about the work happening across Ward 5 and in the 5th District to address incidents. He's going to give an update around crime trends in 5D, as well as new initiatives that he is leading in conjunction with Chief Smith. And we have in the stead of Captain Moore for 3D, we will be joined by Lieutenant Drew, and I hope I got that name right, to share updates from our 3rd district. We know that there was a recent shooting on North Capitol. We will hear updates around steps that are being taken, both to address what some would call an open drug market in and around North Capitol, but also other incidents in the 3rd district. As a reminder, this monthly call is an opportunity for me to share updates around the work that my office is leading, as well as the steps that our public safety agencies are taking to keep neighbors safe. It's also an opportunity for you to ask questions and get answers. For me, it is important for residents to stay as informed and receive accurate information around public safety as we do everything possible to continue to drive down crime. With that, I'm going to start with some of the steps that my office has taken and is continuing to lead on in response to public safety. We held a public safety meeting in the Brooklyn area following the tragic homicide of Avion Evans. We held that public safety meeting at Luke Seymour, and it was a reminder of the work that is still so urgent, that is needed for us to keep our young people safe. The commander will share more information regarding that shooting and the apprehension of the assailant in that incident. But what I can share is that there have been great steps taken between MPD, DCPS, the Metro, my office, and many others following this incident. We have also been in touch with the family of Avion Evans, and will continue to do everything we can to support them during this very tough time. We also are in the midst of budget oversight season. And so just today, I joined the budget oversight hearings for our DC Public Libraries, as well as the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs. I will continue to press on our district agencies to make sure they're delivering for residents. We recently had our public safety meeting for MPD. You will see in some of the images, I stood with Chief Smith as she announced the apprehension of the individual that took the life of Avion Evans. I want to thank publicly the heroic work of our Metro Transit Police and MPD. They in closing that case pretty quickly, and they are working to just make sure that we continue to prevent future incidents impacting our young people. Again, I'm not going to get too in front of the commander who's going to share more about initiatives. But one of the things I will say is that I am interested in convening violence interruption groups. As you know, we have Cure the Streets that are working in our Trinidad area primarily, but also in Eckington, and doing some work in Carver Langston. We have our Ward 5 Violence Prevention Network that is doing work everywhere from Brooklyn to Saratoga, Woodridge, Taft areas, and the list goes on. We know that violence isn't contained to Ward 5, and often what we're seeing is that neighborhoods have beefs with one another, and so folk from Ward 7 are coming over to Carver Langston, and then you have a violent incident and vice versa. And so it's important for us to convene violence interruption groups even outside of Ward 5 so we can get ahead of some of the anticipated beefs and shootings and violent acts that we anticipate, especially as it gets warmer. So I'll share more information about that. And I will also say my office is continuing to lead on our innovative pilot program along the North Capitol Corridor. Next week, we will be outside providing direct services, providing care and resources to neighbors there, because we know while MPD is a great resource for us, they can't do it alone and they shouldn't do it alone. And that pilot effort is about bringing different agencies to the table, including DBH, our community organizations, including the NOMA BID and others, to wrap resources around those communities that have been plagued with violence and drug addiction and many other issues. And so that will be next week, where we are trying to connect people to services so that we can see more long-term solutions to those open drug markets that, again, I alluded to earlier along the North Capitol Corridor. Connected to that, we have cannabis shop enforcement. The council has enacted legislation and created a pathway for cannabis shops to become legal through our medical licensing registration process. There is still a vast number of illegal cannabis shops in and around Ward 5. I am laser focused on making sure we can hold those shops accountable and making sure we close them down because I think they pose a threat to our community. And I will be working with APCA, DLCP, and others thinking about enforcement. And I will just say the quiet part out loud. While the council recently legislated, I worked with Councilmember McDuffie on an amendment to ensure that we empowered APCA to hold illegal cannabis shops accountable. The question still remains, what does that mean? So APCA walks into a shop and says, this is an illegal shop. Then what happens? What does enforcement look like? Those are the questions that transparently we as a government still need to wrap our minds around. And quite frankly, I think we need to have more partners at the table with APCA to make sure we can bring that about. But all that to say, in the months to come, there will be additional focus on cracking down on illegal cannabis shops. I'll stop there. Those are some of the high-level updates from my office. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Commander Donald from the Metro Transit Police Department to share more about what steps Metro is taking to keep residents safe across the system, but also particularly at the Brooklyn Metro Station.
Yes, thank you, sir. So for everybody, my name is Aaron Donald. I'm the commander of the Metro Transit Police 1st District that encompasses Gallery Place North. So the entire red line, as well as the green and yellow from Gallery Place all the way out to Greenbelt. So Brooklyn does fall within my area of responsibility. Unfortunately, we had a tragic incident at Brooklyn back on April 3rd, where a young individual was shot and killed. Since then, we have worked with MPD to increase our number of resources at that station to help combat not only juvenile violence, but also violence in general. Year to date, we've had about 12 offenses that have occurred at the Brooklyn Metro Station. 6 of those are what we would classify as very violent. So that would be your robberies or your aggravated assaults. Of those 6, we've closed out about half. And we still have about 3 cases where we do have good leads on suspects, but we're following up on those. We have been trying to tackle Brooklyn with a mix of both uniform and plainclothes officers. So you may not readily see an officer, but that does not mean that an officer is not at the station. In addition to that, we have allied security officers that are there at the station from open to close. And they kind of move from the bus bay area to the mezzanine area, also to the platform as another level of visibility, as well as our eyes and ears. They do have our police radio. They do carry firearms. If they witness an incident happening, they do have limited police powers in which they can take action. But like I said, more importantly, they do have our police radio, and they do serve as another set of eyes and ears for us to notify us of any suspicious activity or criminal activity. In addition to that, like I said, we also work with MPD. They have been gracious enough to shift some of their resources over to the Brooklyn Metro to also give us a little bit of added security and visibility. So we're trying to work together as a whole to have a real whole government approach to help increase the security. That's all I have. Councilmember Parker, I'm definitely free to answer any questions.
We will open up the floor to have questions, but I will start with one that I heard loud and clear from neighbors at the Brooklyn Public Safety meeting. And that was more about what assurances can you provide, Commander, to neighbors who are on the Metro daily that there won't be more incidents like what we saw at Brooklyn Metro? Specifically, can you just detail the frequency with which there might be enhanced presence in and around the Metro systems in Ward 5?
Yes. So specifically at Brooklyn, we do have a security officer, sometimes upwards of 2 security officers there from open to close. So when the station is open for service, there will be a security guard there. In addition to that, our police officers are often and frequently at the station. Cannot guarantee that they will be there, 24/7, because they do get calls for service and they have to shift away. But we do have officers responding to calls for service from the station, meaning that if they're not actively on a call for service, we want to have an officer detailed to the station. And again, I don't want to suggest that we'll have somebody there 24/7 as far as a Metro Transit police officer, because there are other things that come up, but we are telling our officers to focus at the station and spend the vast majority of their time there when they're working in that sector. But like I said, we do have a security guard that is there from open to close.
And I know at the meeting you provided a number that individuals could call if they see something suspicious and or they want to report something on the Metro Transit system. Can you repeat that number?
Absolutely. So our police dispatch is 202-962-2121, and that is 24/7. And then in addition to that, if you want to remain anonymous or you don't feel as though it's necessary to call per se, we do have a text tip. That number is My MTPD, and the phone number is 696-873.
Thank you for that. I'm going to turn it over to Oliver on my team to lift up any questions. I'm not seeing any in the Q&A box, but that we may have received.
So the first question that we have, in what ways has fair enforcement contributed to the safety of public transportation?
So huge. So what we kind of compare fair enforcement to general or your traditional police officers at the traffic stop. So what we've instituted is what we like to call point of entry policing, meaning that as a individual or group of individuals enter into the system, we want that first contact to be with a police officer at the fare gates. So one that lets the general public know that there's police officers at the station and at multiple stations along their route, but also if we have a criminal actor or ill-advised actor, that they then see police officers at that gate. What we have done, our criminal investigation division did a short study on the amount of criminals who committed violent crimes in the system and their comparison of if they fair evaded. And in that study, they showed that approximately 97% of the people who were committing the very violent crimes or heinous crimes also fair evaded. We get a lot of weapons from fair evasion. We get a lot of warrant arrests from fair evasion. So what we've seen is since we've enacted fair evasion, our crime numbers have actually reduced significantly, especially as it relates to violent crime.
Thank you. Another question is, how is the Metro Transit Police relationship with safe passage workers?
Very good. So we have numerous safe passage locations, especially in District 1, in which I'm responsible for. So Columbia Heights, Georgia Avenue, Noma, Gallaudet, just to name a few. We do work hand in hand again with MPD as well as safe passage to try to ensure that we have officers at that station as well as safe passage representatives at those stations, particularly during school arrival and dismissal times, to make sure that we have coverage of those areas to help reduce any type of violence.
Another question is from Uchenna. I read that there was a contract security officers at Brooklyn Station at the time of the shooting, and these officers were not able to intervene when the fighting started. So just a mere presence did not really help. Is that correct?
So the Allied security officer actually did a phenomenal job. When the shooting occurred, there were numerous juveniles who were on the platform. That security officer risked their life and helped shield officers and shield the other juveniles and move them away from the scene. So they took a very active role in that.
Is there a trend in the day of time as to when these incidents happen or if they've occurred? And is this when police presence is increased?
Yeah, so generally and historically speaking, our violent crime times are during rush hour. That's generally when we have the most ridership, and that's generally most of our crimes occur because there's more people in the system. So during rush hour, which kind of coincides with safe passage, that's when we have influx of officers at the station to, again, help have that visibility and help to prevent anything from occurring.
Do you guys also coordinate with any of the surrounding schools for student arrival and dismissal?
Absolutely. So we have a community services bureau, and in the community services bureau is also our youth services division. They, on a weekly basis and daily basis, coordinate with schools for not only safe passage, but also for presentations with the students to talk about, how to ride the system, safety in the system, and those type of things.
Yesterday there was a viral video of a Metro bus driving off-road in Navy Yard. Could you clarify for neighbors what had taken place?
So I don't have any information that I can provide on that, unfortunately.
Also, one more question. How does MTPD plan on stopping fights among the youth at stations before they become deadly?
So again, part of we're trying to come from multi-faceted approach. So one is our officers going to the schools and speaking to those juveniles, especially schools that we've identified where we see frequent fights from those students. We've also enacted a truancy plan. So between 10 o'clock and 2 p.m., we have officers actively out in the system looking for school-age children who belong in school. If we see them, we'll transport them back to school, obviously notify a parent and the school administrator. So we're trying to do a multitude of things to try to help the youth throughout the city.
And another question is, one of the neighbors would like to inquire about the coverage at Noma in the Rhode Island station following recent incident.
Yes. So in both of those stations, we also have a security guard from open to close. And our police officers are also frequently throughout those stations. So Rhode Island Avenue, we have personnel who are almost dedicated to that station in the afternoon, depending on calls for service. And then Noma, that's one of our safe passage locations. So especially during rush hour, we should have officers present.
All right, thank you. Okay, so that looks like all the questions that we've had so far coming from neighbors. And
I appreciate that, Commander. Two quick follow-ups for that off-road busing incident. Where can residents get more information about that?
So as always, residents can file what we call a PART request or like a FOIA request to get information that way. But also WMATA has an open page or crime blotter for our 24-hour report. I can probably find the link and attach that to the chat later on. I think that comes out monthly.
Got it. Okay, I am looking at a tweet from Metro. It says this Metro bus was part of the Clean Fuel Vehicle Showcase with the Greater Washington Region Clean Cities Coalition. This bus was not in passenger service, and the authorized route taken was the only entry exit point for the event. So for the resident that asked that question, that was the tweet that Metro put out prior. There's also, if folks are interested in supporting Neighbors Learning, well, that's different. There's a resource in the chat. But again, that was the explanation from Metro. Commander, if folk want to get in touch with you and your office, where should they reach out?
All right, so I'll happily give my cell phone number. It is 202-604-3117. My email address is A as in Alpha, Donald, like the duck, DONALD, at WMATA, which is WMATA.com.
And to be clear, if residents have questions, concerns, which ones are more appropriate for you versus Metro leadership?
So I would say anytime that individual feels that there's an active crime taking place, by all means, contact our police dispatch at 202-962-2121. Any other questions, feel free to shoot me an email or give me a call and I'll direct it wherever it needs to go.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, Commander. Feel free to hang out with us for a little bit in case more questions come up. But with that, I'm going to turn over to our 5D Commander. And Commander, as you're sharing, and I know this is already top of mind for you, but I know we've gotten a number of questions, both around the Brooklyn incident, but also the Carver Langston incident. And then tragically, there was a recent shooting in the Trinidad area. So as you're sharing, if you can include those, I would imagine residents would love updates. But over to you.
Hi, thanks for having me, Councilmember Parker and citizens. And hey, Donald, how you doing? Good to see you as always. Great partner with Metro Transit. My name is Sylvan Altieri. I'm the commander for the 5th District. Hold on here while I put my stuff in the chat for you. There we go. All right, all my contact information is in the chat, as well as the 50411 text tip line and the 202-727-9099 number where you can make anonymous tips to the police department, as well as the email for our new environmental crimes unit. And I'll talk to you about that in a minute. So where we are at 5D right now, I don't know if you have the slide or not. There we go. So right now, this is what we're looking at crime-wise. And actually, the decreases have gone up since I turned this slide into Oliver. So our robberies and carjackings, which those of you who live in the Brookland area know were a bane to your existence, as well as Fort Lincoln, where they're getting really hit heavy last year. And Noma, those are down now. They're down actually 16% year to date. So in this so far in April, they're down over 70%. So we are driving our robberies down. I can answer specifically why, but I want to get through everything first. I'll be happy to talk about it when we're done. Our motor vehicle thefts are actually down to 3% now from 4%, and they're down for April. Our homicides are down. The theft from autos are what's really driving our crime right now. If you go to DC Crime Cards, the things you'll see driving the 5th District are theft from autos, motor vehicle thefts, which are going down, but they're not in the negative numbers yet, and sex abuse. With our sex abuse, we've had 10 sex abuse cases this year. Sex abuse is any sort of contact, sexual nature between individuals, be they adult or children, and it's either an act or a contact by the suspect. We have 10 of those. Out of those 10, 1 is a stranger case. Most are either somebody who has a relationship or somebody who'd met somebody and had some sort of interaction with them before this occurred. So there's no, I just want to say that in the sense that I don't want to think there's anyone running around in 5D committing any sort of serial sexual assaults right now. So that's where our crime is. I'm happy with it. I think I'm not where I want to be. Where I want to be is 0, but we're not where we were last year. This same time last year, we had 33 robberies to date. This year, we have 13. So, things are going in the right direction. Unfortunately, bad things still happen. So the Brooklyn homicide was 1. It was great that that was closed with an arrest, but it's unfortunate that does not bring a young man back to his family. That does not help anyone's grief. It might help some way, how down the line with closure, but of course the family's lost a child, and that's a terrible, terrible thing. The suspect for that case did turn himself in. We had good leads on him. We'd gone to a couple different places. So he actually contacted through his attorney to MPD to turn himself in. That happens quite often in law enforcement when people kind of know you're looking for them. So I'm happy that he's turned in. I'm happy that he's charged. And as far as I know, he's still held. As far as what we're doing with Metro, we work in conjunction with Metro. We don't normally patrol their property, but what I'm doing is our peak hours for this incident in particular, it's during school, arrival and dismissal for us. So I have permanent beats in 7 different hotspots throughout the 5th district. A couple of those beats are where the metros are. So the Rhode Island Avenue Metro, Noma Metro, and the Brooklyn Metro. So we do increase our presence down there at those times because we find that not only are our juveniles sometimes suspects in these cases, but oftentimes, more times, they're actually victims. Fortunately, not always homicides, but oftentimes robberies and assaults. So we've been working very closely with schools in our area that we have had issues with as far as with their kids. McKinley Tech is one. The other one is KIPP Preparatory School on Brentwood Parkway. And we've had a really good success working with them, the violence interrupters, the safe passage workers, as well as DCPS, who has an agency, albeit small. I think they have like 8 officers, but they've been involved in this too. And it's really helped kind of drive those numbers down as well. As far as what's going on with 21st and Trinidad, I'm going to say them together because, this is an ongoing thing between these 2 neighborhoods. Essentially, 21st Street is sort of allied with a community from the 6th District, 37th Street, against Northern Trinidad crew members and some folks from Benning Ridge. And unfortunately, while the violence interrupters had done a great job for, over a year now, keeping everything kind of down and keeping everybody okay, this is now kicked up. With the 6 people that were shot last week, we had retaliation shooting over on Mount Olivet Road last Friday. Now, with that shooting, Mount Olivet Road is one of my areas that we call hotspots. It's areas based on crime data that we put overtime units in to staff specifically for violent crime. We don't do it for property crime. We do it for violent crime only. So with the violent crime that's going on over there, we have extra units every shift that the department's paying overtime to work that. Our unit was actually at Mount Olivet Road about 5 minutes before the shooting. Our sergeants go out every hour and do beat checks to make sure these folks are in this certain area they're supposed to work in. Our sergeant came out, did the beat check, sent the email to me because they have to email me every hour as well as the on-duty watch commander. And after they left, the officer went to check 11th and Rom, which is also an area where we get a lot of complaints from. Although the violent crimes down there, we have a lot of drug activity that could lead to violence. He drove over to there, and the minute he left the beat, that's when that shooting occurred. We had to look out for a black vehicle with 2 suspects. That vehicle was recovered in the 4th district, and we are still actively investigating that. I do want to say thank you to the community because that's sort of how we helped find that vehicle through a text tip, but this is an ongoing and open case. What we're doing in both of those neighborhoods, we've increased our hotspot policing. We've increased our frequency of patrols. I got a text the other day from Commissioner Henderson, who's a very involved ANC commissioner, letting me know that people on 21st Street have seen the additional police. Now, while we're working on that, the VIs are trying to work on some sort of resolution, and the homicide and our detectives are working on trying to close those cases. But on our end, it's really trying to work on to make sure we're doing all we can. Some of the things the community could do to assist if they want. Obviously, if you see somebody with a gun, you should text tip us and let us know, try to give a good description, or you can call us on 202-727-9099 and let us know. Part of the issue is a lot of these folks in the community know what's going on and they're scared. I get it. I understand you're worried about your safety. You're afraid to come forward. These anonymous lines do not get pulled into court. You will not be called to testify. Nothing like that's going to happen. You can give the information anonymously. If you do it, the one thing I request is please just make sure you give a fairly good description. And it's hard because not everybody can tell someone's age, people are about at heights, clothing. Try to give a really good clothing description, especially shoes and jackets. I find people have shoes and jackets they really like. I'm the same way. I have a pair of Vans skate shoes I've worn for years. I wear them all the time. So the same person can have those same shoes on day after day after day. So that's something that we could really get some help with. That would be great. Going into summer, we've already pre-prepared for the robberies we had last year. Part of the reason the robberies are down is because the motor vehicle thefts are going down. Last year, we had a rash of Hyundai and Kia thefts. Fortunately, the department's given away a lot of anti-theft devices. Hyundai and Kia has come out with a patch, and citizens have kind of been educated about those type of vehicles. So what's really happening now is it's kind of taking that resource away from the robbers. We're still seeing them, but not as frequently as we had last year. And then we looked at the spots last year that we had a high volume of robberies and carjackings in, and that's kind of where we're deploying our resources into now to try to keep everything tamped down. So far, so good. Hopefully it'll continue this way. I always feel like when I give good news on the, I don't know, I'm a superstitious guy. I always worry. So the other thing we're doing is retail theft. Now, people talk a lot about retail theft. It's a big issue. We have to have businesses in the communities. People need jobs. People need to buy things. We can't have abandoned storefronts. You know, unfortunately, staffing is an issue. And with that, I don't have enough time to devote an entire unit or to do it every day. But what we do is 1 to 2 days a week, we do what's called a retail theft operation. We're working a lot, especially with CBS. They've been super supportive. They're regional loss prevention people. We're going down, we're setting up on these places. When people steal, we are arresting them. We're trying to get barring notices for them. If they've been given, I'm trying to say, get stay away notices for them. If they've been barred from the building, we're enforcing the barring law. So we're arresting them for unlawful entry. So that's one of the things we're trying to do. Another is the package thefts. We get a lot of package thefts from people's front porches and things like that. We are doing a decoy package theft. We started it several months ago. We piloted it here in 5D. The rest of the districts have picked that up now. So far, it's been pretty successful, but the problem with doing something like a package theft, it's time consuming, and you're not necessarily going to always be productive. You can leave a package out on a porch, nobody steals it. You can put something there in a second, it's gone. It really just is it's a hit or miss kind of thing, but we're going to continue to do those as well. Also, in 2022, I piloted a partnership with Amazon when I was in the 6th district. That's finally come to fruition citywide. We actually have a locker here now installed at the 5th district. Most of the districts have one now. If you feel like you want to get a package sent and you're worried or concerned about possibly getting stolen, feel free to come by 5D. It's outside. If somebody wants to come and they don't happen to like the police or feel comfortable around us, that's fine. They can use it as well. I believe every district currently has one except for the 1st district. And I think just 1D is still waiting to get theirs in. So that's a program we started that's working pretty well. I also started an environmental crimes unit here. Now, again, I don't have time to do a whole unit or the people to do a whole unit, but what I did is I got really dedicated officers who wanted to do more. They've been cross-trained in environmental crimes. Now, you might ask why that's important. Well, anyone who lives in Trinidad, anyone who lives in that area, here's an example, abandoned buildings, huge problem, right? People use them for prostitution, they use them for drugs, they use them for dumping. You have the unhoused living there, it can be unsanitary. What can you do? Send an email to the environmental crimes unit. I put it in our chat, and one of our officers will reach out to you. They've been working with the Department of Buildings. They've been getting these buildings boarded up. They've been making arrests on people who have been violating these buildings once they've been boarded up. Also, they do things like dumping, illegal dumping. Someone's dumping tires, someone's dumping trash. They work with that. Abandoned vehicles. Now, let me be clear. We do not tow abandoned vehicles, but if you let us know, we can try to help sort of prod along DPW to get it done, hopefully a little faster. So that's another thing we're doing. We have new cameras coming out in April. They're going to be displaced and put out by where crime is the worst. We've been doing the drug-free zones, which have been pretty successful. Now, one thing about the drug-free zone I just want to touch on real quick. The drug-free zones we're doing every 5 days. That's a specific area within 1,000 square feet that can be clearly labeled by a border in which we can basically tell people, hey, you don't live here, you're not here, you have no reason to be here, you got to go. You know, because it's areas where we can say people are selling drugs, right? Or people are consuming drugs. So it's all based off crime stats and calls for service. If you see things in your area and you say, man, those guys are selling drugs, you need to call or text those numbers, because when we go to look at spots to put the future hotspots in, we have to have the data to support it in order for us to get it over somebody else who's trying to get the same thing. So that would be helpful. Now, there are still drug-free zones around schools. The difference is this: a school drug-free zone means if you are arrested for a narcotics offense, it's double the time, double the fine. That's never gone away. These new drug-free zones that we're doing now, we're rolling out the 5-day ones, those are an old thing we brought back, and it's working out pretty well. I know 5 days doesn't seem like a lot of time, but you have to understand you have to staff it with officers. We can't put 5 in because we'd have to lose 10 officers because it's 2 officers per drug-free zone at a minimum. That's half of my shift normally on a good day. So we have to be able to move them around. We feel it's more disruptive that way. We can always bring it back if their stats still support it, but that's something we're working on. The other thing we're doing here that we've been doing is Operation Safeguard. Again, we started it in 6D, brought it here. That's working with PG County and Mount Rainier, dealing with traffic fatalities along our border. Those are the statistics you see in the slide so far. Since December, we've written 1,183 tickets. I don't know if that sounds like a lot or a little to you. However, we only do this once a month, and we only do it during rush hour on the morning and evening. So I think those are really good numbers for what we're looking at for when we do it. Our ADWs, as I said, are down. That includes all of our shootings. Our thefts are down, and our burglaries are down, which is great because they were sort of trending up on us, but they have started to go in the right direction as well. That's all I have, council member. I want to thank you for having me here, and I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. We have several questions. I'm going to lift up several concerns. Can you, I'm going to ask several. First, I noted in your stats the positive trend for April for motor vehicle theft. However, I noticed year to date, we're still 4% over last year. So it seems like we're moving in the right direction this month. The concern for me is we know last year was an anomaly of a year. And so can you just unpack that more? And I know we were talking about the Honda and Kia issue, but it seems like there has to be more to the issue of why we're still seeing such a significant number of vehicle thefts.
Well, one of the reasons we're seeing them, Hondas and Kias are still actually driving a lot of our stuff. But one of the things we see a lot of here, and it was really bad last year, but I want to thank the NOMA bid. If anyone from the NOMA bid's on, they were excellent partners in helping us out with this last year. What we see a lot of still are hop-ins, where people turn their car on. You know, you have your key fob in your hand. So you think, oh, I can walk away from my vehicle because if, you know, and I can go back in my house and do what I'm going to do. And we see a lot of delivery drivers doing it. So that's still a big driver of our stuff right now, too. People starting the car, leaving the car running, thinking they can walk away. I want to assure you all, most brands of vehicles, and I've not found one yet that doesn't do it. You can start when you start the car from your house and you walk out in the morning, like I have a Subaru, start it in the house, come out in the morning, jump in the front seat. I hit start. I have to, you know, if I already hit start, I have to hit it again. That's only for the initial time. Now, if I drive that car to say the dog park, to take my dog to the dog park, and I get out and leave it running and walk away, the next person who jumps in that car can drive it. And they can drive it till it runs out of gas or till they turn it off. That's it. It'll ding, it'll be annoying, but it will drive. So that's one of the things we see a lot of. And our motor vehicle thefts were over 14%. So yeah, we are definitely trending in the right direction with that right now.
Yeah, so kudos for that. And it seems like if I'm looking at the numbers right, we saw more vehicle thefts in the summer and the fall. In other words, last year, we were going in the wrong direction, seeing an increase in motor vehicle thefts, whereas this year it seems like we're going down, which hopefully that trend will continue. So
yeah, I mean, definitely, Councilmember, yes, you're 100% correct. We had exceptionally higher number of motor vehicle thefts last year at this time. Yes, certainly.
Yes. I know our 3D commander is not on, but can you speak to the coordination that I know is underway between 5D and 3D along North Capitol? Given just some of the continued issues there, and or what 5D is doing to support the work there.
Sure. Well, first of all, I mean, your guys are doing great. Sam from your office is doing a great thing down in the NOMA area, along, you know, especially focusing on like North Capitol and P, that area, really trying to focus a more holistic approach into like drug addiction, the unhoused, mental health issues and things like that. So I think that's great. Kudos to you all for that. As far as us, we expanded our hot zone that's in Eckington down to that area as well. So it now goes down past North Capitol. We got a crime camera put on P Street. I got that done the last time we went through. And we're going to be doing another one on Florida Avenue. So it's that's going to help us out a little bit as far as the real-time crime center goes. And Commander Bowler is a great partner, as well as Commander Hall. I don't know if you all know, but we actually are across from 1D and 5D on our border on North Capitol, actually 4D as well. But 1 and 5 is a little bit closer. And 1 and 3 is a little bit closer. So Jimmy and I actually work together. We coordinate quite often. Our CST units have worked together. I've done stuff with Monteverde myself as far as like meeting with parents. We've been escorting the kids to events and things like that. We've done it last year for their biking event they had. So we're really trying to coordinate, especially now with the drug-free zones. Like he's got one right now in North Capitol. So we're on the other side of North Capitol, kind of watching our area just to really kind of break up all the activity that's going on. Also with Commander Hall, it's the same thing. We're doing a lot of joint operations between the two because what we find is, crime doesn't really know a border. You might know a border by a beef where you're going to go into a neighborhood to do something really bad, but people will often try to commit acts of violence just anywhere they see somebody who they feel is that the target of that. So we have to be really cognizant of that. We share a lot of information. Our crime suppression teams work very well together. And so far it's been pretty successful. Also along the North Capitol Corridor for us, again, NOMA, I want to thank you guys because we've had some really good arrests on M Street, and it's really been because of businesses and citizens letting us have access to cameras, letting us have access to locations, being able to OP these narcotic sales in real time and make arrests. So I want to thank them for that. It's been very, very helpful.
And the last thing before we turn to community questions, drug-free zones. I know that you said they're going well. I would love for you to elaborate more in the trends that you're noticing. One of the concerns that was flagged when the Secure DC law was being voted on at the council as well, we're just going to push individuals from one block to the next as we establish these drug-free zones. Are you in fact seeing that? And can you share more about what trends you are seeing with the implementation of drug-free zones in Ward 5?
Sure. Well, anytime you have police anywhere, you're always going to have some sort of displacement. But I'm not really seeing, I'm not saying a super enhanced version. For instance, like we did it in Trinidad, the guys that were there kind of just moved off. Now they were gone for 5 days. They weren't really just across the street. They were kind of out of the area a little bit more. You'll see some displacement, sure. And that's up to us. And that what we do with it personally is like in Saratoga, and we just did it recently, we had units doing the drug-free zone, but we also had other units coming in on the other side where we knew the people were going to congregate and try to sell. So it actually it can be beneficial sometimes for people to get them moved to a different spot, especially if we have ways to really watch the activity that's going on there covertly, through cameras or anything like that, so we can actually help affect arrest and make cases. Also with the drug-free zones, we're not really seeing a ton of drug activity. We had quite a few arrests in our drug-free zones. One was for failure to move on. Most people leave when you tell them to leave. But the other ones were for open warrants, thefts, and stuff like that. We've not, I think once the people see they understand what the purpose of the drug-free zone is, I think they kind of try to take their activities elsewhere.
So quick follow-up there, just in practice, walk me through what that looks like. So you have the drug-free zone, someone with an open warrant is in the zone, and then you're stopping them to ask questions, and then you realize they have a warrant.
Yeah, well, you make a contact with somebody. So there's three things in DC you can do, right? One's called a contact, one's called a stop, and then of course one's an arrest. A contact is like basically me walking up to you on the street saying, hey, how you doing, council member? And you can either talk to me or not, whatever. And we can engage a conversation. As long as I'm not blocking your path or detaining you, and we're speaking to each other, we're talking, we can say, hey, what's going on with this? How are you? You live in this area, because like with the guy we had with the ferry to move along, he was at an abandoned bus stop by 3 abandoned buildings, didn't get on one bus. So we went over and asked him, what was up, and told him, hey, can you just get out of the drug-free zone? He refused. And then he turned out he was from Maryland down there for other reasons. But yeah, so basically it's a matter of just contacting people and talking to them. Now, with the warrant, we've had some for that. One of the warrants we cleared was because we arrested 2 people stealing from CVS. One of them had an open warrant on them. And we also get traffic in the drug-free zones too. So we actually have had a traffic arrest there as well.
Okay. I'm going to turn it over to Oliver to lift up questions from the community.
All right, thank you. So since we are still on drug-free zones, I have a question that pertains to that. Can you discuss the drug-free zone implemented in Ward 5 and the purpose of them? How are they helping neighbors who use substances obtain wraparound services as opposed to criminalization?
That's a good question. My brother is an addict, and I understand it growing up with it. That there is an addiction purpose. Me personally, honestly, I feel it's more important to arrest the sellers than it is to arrest the buyers. But we have laws, and that's kind of, we do what we do. But in our drug-free zones, our folks have actually gone down in an outreach for people in the community that have issues, trying to see if they can get help. Would also welcome anybody from any organization who would want to come into one of the drug-free zones and possibly offer anything they can. Anyone in this call right now who wants to come in, regardless of your political or social leanings, if you'd like to come into one of the zones, maybe talk to people about addiction counseling, health counseling, maybe somewhere they can get help, I would be happy to set you up with that. As a member of the ACLU myself for the last 14 years, I totally respect people's rights.
We also have a question. said that they were curious to know what MPD is doing about the influx of motorized scooters.
Okay, so the scooters are a problem. I'm not gonna lie, they are. So part of the issue with the scooters is the fact that a lot of the folks having the scooters are people that are migrants here right now. They're not, some of them aren't 100% clear on what our laws are. I'm not saying all of them. I'm sure some of them are clear and they don't care. But I would say overall, I think it's a matter of education. What 5D has been doing, we've been trying to work with migrant services to help educate. They've been a fantastic partner. But we're trying to really see if we can educate the folks to let them know what they can and can't do with the scooters, because all that's going to happen is people are going to get hurt on the scooters, and we don't want anyone to get hurt. We don't want anyone's property to be damaged. So we also are doing enforcement. One thing we're not going to do, we're not going to pursue scooters. We're not going to chase them. It's unsafe. We can't chase for traffic anyway. So, if we see one doing something, we might try to do a traffic stop, but if they take off, that vehicle is going to be allowed to flee, just like a car would be in a case of a traffic violation, because we don't want to endanger people's lives based on traffic.
We have another question from a neighbor. He said that I am a resident of the 2nd Street Northeast in Eckington. My building recently discovered that a tenant is stealing packages from the building lobby where they are dropped off. We found this out because we had a series of break-ins in the past month where the perpetrator ripped the fob off of the gain access to our building and steal packages, bikes that were stored. Our board went to the videotape and did not see the perpetrator leave. And in the morning, a fellow neighbor went through the tenant's trash and found boxes addressed to the neighbor. The officers who were there showed up and said that there was nothing that they can do, despite it being clear that their packages were addressed to the building residents that are not this tenant. Last night, we had the same perpetrator return and rip fob off the front door of the building. Per the officers who had showed up, a detective needed to be the one who goes through the trash in order for the officers to do something. What is the MPD doing to help this stop?
Well, first of all, Eckington is one of the areas we deploy a lot of our overtime to, and we've gotten the violent crime in Eckington down substantially. We also work with multiple buildings in Eckington. However, MPD cannot police every building or inside of every building. So I guess my question would be if you could email me separately, give me the building management. Do you guys have security, first of all? What type of security is it? What shifts do they work? I understand that you're saying that it's someone in the building, but do we know that? Based on just finding something in trash, that's circumstantial evidence. That's not enough for us to get an arrest warrant or something like that with. It's not for us to take note of it. Obviously, the report needs to be filed. That can be added to the report. And also, we have to be careful how we collect evidence. Crime scene search should be the ones doing it. With the trash, for example, is that indoor, outdoor trash, and those kind of things. Karina, Miss Watts, my stuff's in there. It's 1, 2, 3. It's 4 things above you. Sylvan Altieri at dc.gov. So, but yeah, I would be happy to talk to you. But yes, we get a lot of complaints from a lot of buildings for things like that. And while we'd be happy and we wish we had enough people to be inside every building, we do not. So normally what we do is work with management and try to see what we can do to help improve it. I do have a guy here, Franz Fulcher. He's a sergeant I brought over from my old district. He's actually trained in site security. Well, he's done it enough for the OAG that he's actually gone to several buildings in the area and talked to them about camera placement, security, and things like that in order to try to improve security like that for the building. I would encourage whoever the victim is for these cases, obviously file a police report. And then if somebody could reach out to me from management, I'll get in touch with Captain Figueres. That's the captain for that sector. He'll be super happy to go ahead and talk to your management people and see what we can do in order to work with them to try to solve that problem.
Right.
I hope that answers your question.
Another question is, could you give an update on the recruitment of new officers in 5D?
Sure. Well, we're recruiting them everywhere. I wish we were recruiting them just for 5D because they all want to come here. But so I want to say recruitment's going really well. Councilmember Parker, the city council, the mayor's office has been outstanding as far as trying to get new officers. $25,000 signing bonus, and other incentives as far as rental assistance for the first 6 months, things like that. They're working on something as far as if you're coming down from out of state to train, possibly being able to pay for your lodging. So MPD is really doing a lot. We actually have a really good recruitment team. They've been going up to New York a lot since NYPD has a housing freeze right now. There's our housing freeze. There's a police officer, a hiring freeze right now, I guess. So we're actually up there trying to get a lot of their candidates as well. I've seen a lot more interest than I had 2 years ago. However, it is a slow rebuild. We have a lot of people for the last couple of years, and not unjustified. Law enforcement took a hit as far as its integrity and the way it's viewed by the public. And because of that, it really did impact people wanting to do this job. So we were going from classes of maybe 10 people to now classes of 20 and upwards. So they are doing a great job. The problem is it takes time to rebuild this. There's going to be a period, and we're in it right now, unfortunately, where we have to do more with less. And that's why we as commanders have to try to find ways to do things to keep this crime down without, worrying about getting more staffing. But yes, they are coming. We got a couple officers in the last group and a couple officers before that. So slowly we are getting more officers in.
Thank you. So I believe that's all the questions that we have on this side. So we appreciate you answering those. And I'll pass it up to Councilmember Parker.
There is another Q&A. I want to speak to this, and Commander, maybe you could talk more about the Brooklyn incident and what led to the apprehension of the individual that took the life of Avion Evans. But the question reads, is the individual who murdered Avion still going to be charged as a juvenile? Whether the answer is yes or no, can the council member talk to the Attorney General about the need to charge individuals who commit heinous crimes and don't appear to be individuals capable of being rehabilitated, or at least will likely commit more heinous crimes before they could one day be rehabilitated as adults, so that there is a greater chance that such individuals will be removed from society while they are still at this age? What I will say is that it is not up to the Attorney General whether or not someone is charged as an adult or a juvenile. That distinction is given to our U.S. Attorney, a federally appointed partner. The U.S. Attorney determines whether or not an individual will be charged as an adult. If they are not charged as an adult, it defaults to them being charged as a juvenile. The individual in this case was 16 years old. And the decision up until this point is not to charge them as an adult. I know that several community members have concerns about that decision on both sides. Some support the individual being charged as a juvenile, some want them being charged as an adult. What I can say is, as I said, that decision is to the U.S. Attorney, and what I am making clear to all partners involved, I've had a conversation with the Attorney General, is that we want this individual held accountable. I am confident the individual will be held accountable. I think the concerns here about the individual not being charged as an adult are valid. And it is something that, quite frankly, I think our system needs to look at. No, we do not want to throw away the key and lock up kids for the rest of their life for making a mistake. However, we don't want to send the message that you can take someone's life just because you're a teenager. So I will just leave it at that. But Commander, can you speak to what led to the individual being apprehended and what steps, if any, have taken place afterwards?
Well, it's a homicide investigation, so I don't have a ton of information because homicide isn't sharing anything with us either. But I will say, based on the great video, Metro Transit has the best video I've ever seen. Just so everybody here knows that. Their video is amazing. So based on that and some other things, homicide was able to piece together who they believe the suspect was pretty quickly. But it wasn't enough to confirm it, to put it out right away. We had a couple tips pretty much quickly trying to find this person, and we were trying to locate them. They were drafting all their custody orders and things like that for him. And what basically happens a lot of times when you're looking for somebody, especially something really high profile like that, where there's a lot of publicity around it, it kind of gets back to the person, unless they're on like a media freeze out. And of course, a kid always has their phone and everything. But it kind of gets back to the people that, hey, people are looking for you. And a lot of times what happens is people turn themselves in. I mean, we have it happen quite frequently. I know Councilman Parker, you and I talked about it when it happened, but yeah, we have that happen quite frequently, especially with the crimes like that are a bit more high profile, just because I think they know that, they're going to eventually get caught, so sometimes it's better to get ahead of it. So that's kind of how that happened. I mean, it was really because of like getting the information out, being able to push all that stuff out, all the great stuff the community did as far as putting out the pictures we would send out and the videos, all that stuff really helps. Sometimes if we're putting every single crime on like, it's X now, but Twitter, it makes you more scared as a citizen because you think, oh my gosh, crime is so worse because I keep seeing it. But in an instance like this, it's awesome that the community can go and share those images and share things like that, because it not only helps us or help hopefully someone identify them. In some cases, I think it really puts pressure on the offender because they know it's just a matter, you know.
Thank you for that. And I would just also note that tomorrow is DYRS's budget oversight hearing. One of the things I'm probing on or plan to probe on is how they are rehabilitating the young people in their jurisdiction. One thing I found out during performance oversight is that the young people there aren't provided mental health services much of their stay or as they exit. However, those services are provided at DC jail as an individual is planning their exit. So to the question of how are we rehabilitating individuals, including our juveniles, I think that is a very great point. And it is something that we need as a system to think more deeply about related to DRS. So just wanted to throw that plug in there. Commander, I want to thank you for your time. I want to thank you for your partnership. The commander's contact information is in the chat if you have more questions. What I can say also is that the commander recently shared that he's making a request for more CCTV cameras to be implemented across the ward. We will share the locations of those cameras once they are confirmed. I am seeing a hand. Mr. Foxworth, if you could share your question via chat or the Q&A box before we transition to our 3D partners, that would be great. But I want to make sure we get you in here. We don't have 4D on the call, but I do want to note also an incident that I know occurred in our Queens Chapel community in 4D, a burglary where someone broke into an individual's home. Queens Chapel is a relatively quiet neighborhood relative to crime. And we are actively working to set up a conversation with Chief Smith, Commander Lavenhouse, and the Queens Chapel Civic Association leadership. That will happen any day now. I did just want to speak to that because, and I will be transparent, Ward 5 neighbors in 4D feel as though there's a need to increase the level of responsiveness for Ward 5 neighbors in 4D. Like 5D, 4D covers a large swath of area, including Ward 4, which is facing its own issues, and a relatively quiet part of Ward 5. And so part of the goal of that conversation is to come up with concrete strategies for how we can increase responsiveness, timeliness when someone calls MPD, when someone calls 911 to ensure that they can get an answer. The neighbors in 4D shared they called 911 twice. They didn't get an answer. They eventually reached someone. And those are the things that we're continuing to work on. But I did want to acknowledge that for any of our 4D neighbors that may be on. Mr. Foxworth, did you have a question? I saw your hand. We can't let you off mute, but feel free to use the chat or the Q&A function. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward. All right, I'm going to keep us moving. If there is a question, we'll come back to our commander. But again, Commander Altieri, I want to say thank you. Lieutenant DeRoe, am I saying that right?
Yes, that's correct. It's
Okay.
Lieutenant DeRue.
Daru, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to your updates related to the 3rd District. So I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome. My name is Lieutenant DeRue. I'm actually the PSA lieutenant for PSA 306. So that is right against North Capitol on the upper end. And I'm also going to brief out today on PSA 308, which is the other part of Ward 5. So I believe we go up to New Jersey and then going up parts of Florida and then up towards Bryant. Just real quick, when it comes to overall 3D stats, I did not separate them out completely. And I know Ward 5 is only part of 3D, but overall crime is down. Violent crime this year compared to last year is down by 15%. And the property crime is also down by 19%. Just as Commander Altieri was speaking about, the car thefts, of course, are continuing. Although the car thefts are down by 22%, but it's an important figure because it's these vehicles that are often used in the robberies. And a lot of times what we find is they will steal a car, a lot of times with these hop-ins especially. And since we have the U Street corridor, a lot of deliveries, of course, in the 3rd district, they will steal these cars, they will stash them somewhere, do a robbery or any other kind of crime, and then change out these stolen vehicles. So stolen vehicles is a very important factor to get under control. Again, we use the AirTags type of programs. We are giving out another set, I believe, this week for Coffee with a Cup, and we do have some more available to the 3rd district residents. And that helps a lot because if we can track these vehicles as soon as possible, that is a major impact. One of the things that I really wanted to talk about also is the camera program. DC Connect is a huge benefit to us, and we definitely want to encourage everyone to take a look at it. You can go on the website. You can go onto the DC government website, look up the camera rebate program, or if you type in DC Connect. We're solving a lot of crimes much quicker because we have access to cameras, and a lot of residents and or businesses have these cameras where it's an instant access. We closed a very nice robbery with 2 out of the 5 arrested the other day because we had a robbery on 11th Street, which I know is outside of Ward 5. But one of the businesses had just hooked up a really nice camera program, and it captured 5 suspects and a vehicle so quickly that we were able to get this information out immediately. Now, with Teams, Microsoft Teams, and other different ways of communicating between districts now, especially between management, we were able to immediately put out these photos of the suspects of the vehicle. I know the vehicle came through 5D, the vehicle came through 1D, and because we're able to push it out immediately in a photograph to our members, that makes a very big difference to the officers because they can instantly see what we're looking for. So the DC Connect, the DC rebate program is a huge benefit. And if anyone wants information on that, that's a great one to go to. And again, you can get it on the DC rebate program or DC Connect if they want to type that in and find out information on that. And no, we do not take control over their cameras. It basically is just sharing information. If detectives or officers, ask for, hey, was anything caught on your camera? Are you willing to give us that information? So that is a huge program for us. When it comes to some of the crime that is in the Ward 5 area of 3D, we do still, of course, have a lot of the North Capitol Street issues that Commander Altieri spoke about as well. We have a lot of resources that we're trying to use to address it, including the drug-free zones that we've talked about quite a bit on this meeting already. We have a new one that just started today, which is North Capitol to 1st Street Northwest, and then it's P as in Paul Street to N as in Nora Street. So we are dedicating a lot of resources to that. We also use DPW for any kind of parking violations. They're always available for us to kind of do a little bit of extra in those areas. We have an officer that's strictly assigned to that area. We also have a business beat unit in the 3rd district that is very, very active. They do a lot of not just the business checks, not just making sure that the businesses have cameras operating, that they know about the safety procedures. They do also do a lot of life quality crime interruptions. So it's you're out there urinating in public. It's the small time drug dealing. So they do a lot of arrests on that, and kind of the same thing that we're doing in the drug-free zone to kind of assist helping with some of those smaller crimes that we as police, see really affecting the residents. If you can't walk through a neighborhood without, someone literally urinating in an alley, it really affects the residents, and we're hearing a lot of complaints about that. So we're really focusing on that, as well as the bigger impact, of course, of the bigger crimes. We also have traffic overtime. The traffic overtime is indeed also dealing with a lot of the scooter issues, etc. There's certain regulations for a scooter, and they need to be they need to be registered. And especially on the 14th Street corridor, we see a lot of those scooters that are being used for these food deliveries. And as was stated, it's dangerous. I mean, I see them going around and they have no helmets on, their feet are down, and I'm just waiting for a big accident. So again, something that we're also trying to address. The other three things that we have going in 3D to assist with crime is we do have the robbery suppression overtime. Robbery suppression overtime is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, and they are often out in 3D, including, of course, the U Street corridor, Shaw, kind of those areas. They'll hit Ledroyd if we have an uptick there. They're very much that driven, as in, you know, where the crime is where these units are going to flood the neighborhood. So that's been a huge asset. And they work from 8 o'clock in the evening all the way up until 4 o'clock in the morning. So they really can reach out and try to interrupt some of that crime. They do a lot of good arrests. We have a lot of gun recoveries as well. And then the third one that we have specifically in 3D is hotspot overtime. So hotspot overtime is basically run from 3 o'clock in the afternoon until 11 o'clock. And that hotspot overtime is for specific zones, again, stat driven. So they look at the areas that have the highest crime and they will move them around. So at the moment we have 6 zones. We just moved zones a little bit based on the statistics of where crime is. So for instance, in my PSA in 306, we kind of had the hot zone a little bit more towards the 2nd Street area. We had a bunch of robberies towards the beginning of this year, around 4th and T, and now the crime has moved a little bit more westbound. So we have moved it a little bit closer towards Florida Georgia Avenue in that 306 PSA. So all of that is statistics driven. So the more crime in one area, we will move the resources into that area. And then of course we have our crime suppression units who are making a huge difference. That's pretty much what I have at the moment when it comes to statistics. I don't know if we have any specific questions. I believe Commander Altieri has pretty much spoken a lot about most of the initiatives that are MPD wide already. So,
well, thank you for that overview of what's happening in 3D. I know something that has been top of mind for many neighbors and parents is the repeated incidents around Mundo Verde near North Capitol. Can you speak to efforts underway to shore up that area, both around the establishment of the drug-free zone, both also about direct interactions and interventions around the Mundo Verde campus?
yes, we have actually dedicated a unit to make that little area there kind of a special attention, especially during school let out. It is understandable that parents are very concerned. I mean, there have been a lot of sounds of gunshots. There have been some shell casings recovered in that area. We had shell casings recovered. Let me just double check that before I give you the wrong time. At 1326 North Capitol on the 21st. So yes, I totally understand. And Commander Boatler is totally dedicated to make sure that residents feel safe and that they feel safe where their kids go to school. So we have at school let out to make sure that there's a unit there. A lot of times we have our CDU units that come back from downtown. They'll be posted up there. So we've been paying a lot of attention to the school let outs, which again, also in combination with Metro Transit is a big thing, because when we see those large groups coming around, that also disrupts life quite a bit. So when they move around between their school, going to Metro, etc., our officers are paying very close attention to those groups as well.
And should parents and neighbors have questions, is there a direct contact for you and or the commander that folk can reach out to?
Certainly. I mean, I can put my email in and I can always redirect any of the emails. So I will put my email in the chat right now.
Awesome. Thank you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Oliver to see if we have any questions.
We have one question. Is there enforcement taking place in response to the tobacco shops on North Capitol Street? Any MPD enforcement?
So going back to our business beat has been the one that's really been involved with any of the tobacco shops, and they work very closely with LPDC, the license agency, to ensure that those businesses are working under the correct regulations and that there is no illegal activity in any of those shops.
And I'm going to jump in. I'm passionate about this. I know, Lieutenant, your team is working. I am not satisfied with the work of DLCP. We know there is illegal activity happening in many of those shops along the North Capitol corridor. We have evidence that they are selling things that we have deemed illegal, from synthetic drugs to flavored tobacco and other elements that the council has said you cannot sell this. I have personally requested that DLCP visit a number of locations, and the response that I got from that agency was, oh, they're in compliance. A week later, I hear from MPD officers about how they're confiscating paraphernalia from these shops, which tracks with what I know is happening. And it's a bit frustrating. So while I know you all are working, I'm pushing on this because we need to crack down, and we need our district agent, our licensing agency, to crack down more to take effect of what's happening, not just on North Capitol, but across the city.
Well, that's actually, I mean, that's a good thing for our officers to hear, that we are actually the ones that are finding it. So, but you're correct. I mean, working together with agencies, that's the only way to get out of any of these issues. So, I'm assuming that your office is able to put a little bit more pressure on them than our MPD would be able to. But it's nice to hear that our officers are making a lot of those kind of discoveries and arrests and confiscations, confiscations that are needed.
Not to belabor this point, but this goes back to what I was saying at the top of the call, and I invite MPD to be part of these conversations. Right now, the council is deliberating, what does enforcement against illegal cannabis shops look like? Right at our last legislative meeting, we said ABCA, the Alcohol Beverage Cannabis Administration, can enforce against illegal weed shops. But let's walk through that. All right, an ABCA individual walks in and says, I'm seeing illegal activity and/or you don't have a license. Then what happens? I'm not persuaded that that's enough. And I'm not necessarily saying MPD needs to be the answer, but I think as a city, we need to get serious about this. And I'm not saying cannabis is bad, but we've created a pathway to license and register legal cannabis shops. And we have a proliferation of illegal shops that are essentially getting away with operating under everybody's nose. So I'll get off my soapbox, but that is something I want to crack down on as a city.
Well, and if I may, you know, I like that soapbox, because one of my soapboxes has been the illegal establishments that are having our after parties. And I have literally, my background in Prince William County was with zoning enforcement. So I'm very familiar with how things work. And we have a bunch of after hours illegal nightclubs that are literally every day I deal with it. And again, it's kind of like what you're talking about. A little bit can be MPD, a little bit can be the DOB, a little bit can be ABCA, but ABCA says they can't enforce someone who doesn't have a license to sell alcohol to begin with. But if they're selling alcohol, then who is responsible for it? We can't get into those. So I understand that. And it's very important for us to literally all get together. And that's one of the things, for instance, 501 North Capitol Street is, or I'm sorry, 501 Florida Avenue, that I've been dealing with. And it's one of those that just kind of falls right through the cracks of everything. Yeah.
Yes.
And so I understand your frustration, and hopefully if you get somewhere with that one, I'd love to be a part of it and hear more about it, because we have a few things that are just really hard to enforce through all the agencies.
More to come on that. Oliver, did you have more there?
I think that sums up all the questions on our side here.
Okay. I did want to, well, thank you, Lieutenant.
You're
I
welcome.
appreciate you sharing. Rodney, I saw your comment about finding a time and a date to have a meeting in the Lamont Riggs community. We will follow up with you today to get the ball rolling on that. And you have my word that I'm happy to partner with you all to talk about public safety. Also, for Lamont Riggs, it is important to note that the park that community has been requesting for more than 10 years. I'm looking at you, Rodney. I'm looking at you, Uchenna, and others that may be on this call, is in fact happening. And the groundbreaking should happen this fall, because when we think about safe communities, we know, and I believe it's healthy communities where it's resources and amenities and recreational outlets and green space, and the list goes on. So I'm really excited that we were able to get that done for the Lamont Riggs community. That is it for us. I'm gonna do one last call for any questions. Otherwise, I'm gonna let people log off a little early. I want to thank Commander Donald from the Metro Transit Police. I want to thank Commander Altieri from the 5th District. And I want to thank Lieutenant DeRue from the 3rd District. And we will share again more information about that meeting in 4D and look to have more updates from the 4th District in our next month's call. But that will conclude our monthly War 5 public safety call for this month. Thank you all.